At 2 a.m., rainy night, barefoot and shaking, 17-year-old Kima clutched a small plastic bag of her belongings as the house door slammed behind her. Her stepfather's final words rang in her ears. "You're not my blood. Go find your real people." She thought the cab driver was just another stranger until he said her full name and smiled. Kima was just 6 years old when everything in her life changed. Her mother got married again, and they moved into a new house with a man named J-Lo. From the very beginning, J-Lo didn't like Kima. He looked at her like she was a burden and told her mother, "She's not mine, she's your problem." Those words stuck with Kima for years. At first, she tried to be kind and helpful, hoping J-Lo would one day treat her like family. But no matter what she did, it was never enough. Every day, while other children played or watched TV, Kima was cleaning the house, cooking meals, or taking care of chores. J-Lo never said thank you. Instead, he acted like she didn't exist. Her mother, afraid of causing fights, stayed silent. Kima would sit quietly during dinner, while J-Lo laughed with his friends and treated her like a shadow. She wore old clothes, ate last, and got blamed for things she didn't do. Even at school, she stopped talking much because the sadness she carried was too heavy. As time passed, the pain of being unwanted became normal to her. She didn't cry anymore, not because she wasn't hurt, but because she had no more tears left. Kima felt like a guest in her own home. No one hugged her. No one asked if she was okay. She was there, but it was like she didn't matter. And even though she was just a child deep inside, Kima started to believe what J-Lo said, that she didn't belong. When Kima was 16, something happened that broke her heart completely. Her mother became very sick during her pregnancy. Every day, Kima watched her struggle, getting weaker and weaker. Kima tried her best to help, doing everything around the house while still going to school. She hoped the new baby would bring some happiness. But instead, things got worse. After a long and painful labor, her mother gave birth to a baby boy. But just a few hours later, she passed away. Kima was frozen in shock. Her mother, the only person who ever showed her any love, was gone. But there was no time to cry. The baby, Lumo, was crying and needed care. J-Lo, instead of showing sorrow or kindness, looked at Kima with anger in his eyes and said, "This is your fault. You bring bad luck." Those words pierced her heart, but she stayed quiet. She held the baby close and promised herself she would protect him, no matter what. Even though she was only a teenager, Kima became everything to little Lumo. She fed him, changed his clothes, stayed awake at night when he cried, and even sang to him soft just to make him smile. No one helped her. J-Lo ignored both of them. He would go out for days, drink, and act like Lumo didn't exist. But Kima didn't care. She loved the baby with all her heart. In her eyes, he was a part of her mother, a part of love. But when Lumo turned 1, something cruel happened. On his birthday, while Kima was preparing a small meal with the little money she had saved, J-Lo walked into the house and said coldly, "You've served your purpose. Now leave." Kima couldn't believe it. She begged to stay, begged to hold Lumo just one more time. But J-Lo didn't listen. He threw her things outside and slammed the door in her face, leaving her in the cold, alone and heartbroken. It was raining heavily that night. The clock showed 2 a.m. and the whole street was silent. Everyone was asleep, except Kima. Her heart was racing as J-Lo shouted at her again, louder than ever before. His face was full of anger, and his eyes looked like he had no soul. Before she could say a word, he grabbed her by the arm, dragged her outside like she was trash, and slammed the door behind her. Her old, worn-out backpack landed beside her in the mud. That was all she had. Her clothes were wet, her hands were shaking, and tears mixed with the raindrops on her face. She stood in the middle of the road, barefoot, not knowing where to go. No relatives, no friends, no money, nothing. Just pain and a heart that was tired of breaking. She hugged her backpack tightly and tried not to cry too loud, but her body couldn't hide the fear. She was only a child, and the world felt so big and so cruel. She whispered to the sky, "Why does nobody want me?" Then, something unexpected happened. A cab slowly drove past. The driver saw the small figure in the rain, stopped, and rolled down his window. "Are you okay?" he asked. Kima didn't look up right away. She was embarrassed, cold, and scared. She finally whispered, "I don't have any money." The driver stepped out, walked over gently and looked at her with soft eyes. Then he said something strange. "Good. That means you won't run when I tell you who I am." Kima blinked in confusion. Why would a stranger say that? Who was he? But the way he looked at her wasn't like others. It wasn't pity. It was something deeper, like he knew her. She didn't know it yet, but this rainy night, the worst night of her life, was about to become the night everything changed. Because the man in the cab wasn't just any driver. He was someone who had been searching for her for a very long time. Kima sat quietly in the back seat of the cab, still shaking from the cold and fear. The driver glanced at her through the mirror, then slowly pulled the car to the side of the road. He turned around, his voice calm but full of emotion. "Kima," he said softly. She froze. How did this man know her name? She had never seen him before. Her heart started beating faster. Then he smiled gently and said, "I'm Tego. I was your father's best friend." Kima's eyes widened in shock. Her father? She had always been told he was a bad man, someone who left and never cared. But now this stranger, Tego, was telling her a different story. Tego looked at her with so much care in his eyes. "Your father loved you more than anything," he said. "He was a good man, but he died too soon. Before he passed, he made me promise one thing. He made me promise to find you if something ever happened." Kima couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her whole life she thought her father was a mistake, someone to forget. But now she was learning that everything her mother told her wasn't true. Tego explained how her mother had kept Kima's father a secret. There were problems between them, lies and pain. But her real father had always wanted to be in her life. He had written letters, tried to reach out, but nothing ever got to Kima. Tego's voice broke a little as he said, "I searched for you for years, hoping to keep my promise. And tonight, when I saw you standing alone in the rain, I just knew." Kima's tears came again. But this time, they were different. Not just sad, but full of feelings she couldn't describe. For the first time in her life, someone had come for her. Someone who knew her name, who knew her story, and didn't walk away. As the cab moved forward again, something inside Kima began to heal. The man behind the wheel wasn't a stranger after all. He was a part of her past that was never really gone. And maybe, just maybe, he was the start of a better future. As the car drove away from the city, Kima sat quietly beside Tego, holding her torn bag tightly. The road was long and quiet, and the trees on both sides looked peaceful, very different from the life she had just left behind. Tego didn't say much, but his calm presence made her feel safe. When they finally reached his home in the countryside, it was still dark. But the moment the front door opened, a warm light spilled out, and a gentle woman with kind eyes stood waiting. Her name was Abeni, Tego's wife. She didn't ask Kima many questions. She didn't look at her with pity or confusion. She simply pulled her into a soft hug and said, "Welcome home, my child." Those words made Kima's eyes fill with tears. No one had ever called her that, not even her own mother after she married J-Lo. That night, Abeni gave Kima warm food, clean clothes, and a room of her own, something Kima had never had before. The bed was soft, the blanket smelled fresh, and there was even a tiny lamp on the table beside her. She sat on the bed, looking around in disbelief. It felt like a dream. For the first time in her life, she wasn't treated like a burden. The next day, Abeni surprised her with a small birthday cake. "You told Tego your birthday was last week," she said. "We're a little late, but this is still for you." Kima was speechless. She had never had a cake before. As she blew out the candle, she made a silent wish for Lumo, her baby brother, to be safe. Tego and Abeni also helped her return to school. She got books, a backpack, and new clothes. Kima was smart and eager to learn, and the teachers were kind to her. Every day she worked hard in class, but no matter how good things looked on the outside, inside her heart, there was still a heavy pain. At night, when the house was quiet, Kima would stare at the ceiling and think about Lumo. She remembered how his tiny fingers held hers, how he giggled when she sang to him, how he cried when she left. She had raised him like a mother, and now she didn't even know if he was okay. Even though her new life was full of love and comfort, a part of her heart remained back in the city, with the little boy who still called her sister. One quiet afternoon, while Tego was cleaning out an old wooden chest that had belonged to Kima's mother, he found something strange tucked between two old books. It was a small, yellowed envelope with Kima's name written on it, in shaky handwriting. Tego opened it carefully. Inside was a letter written by Kima's mother, but never sent. As he read the words, his hands began to shake. The letter was full of deep emotions. Kima's mother wrote about her biggest regret in life, hiding the truth about Kima's real father. She admitted that Kima's father was a good and honorable man, someone who truly loved them. But fear, pride, and pressure from others made her keep it a secret. She explained how she married J-Lo to survive, but never stopped feeling guilty for what she had done. She begged for Kima's forgiveness. She wrote, "Please forgive me for letting you grow up without knowing the truth. I was weak, but you were always strong. I only hope one day someone tells you the truth." Then came the most shocking part. The letter clearly stated that J-Lo had no legal right over Kima. In fact, he was never even supposed to be her guardian. And even more surprising, the letter revealed that Lumo was not J-Lo's biological child either. Kima's mother had kept that secret too. Lumo's father had died before he was born, and J-Lo only stayed because of money and control. Tego couldn't believe it. He immediately called Abeni, and together they showed the letter to Kima. As Kima read her mother's words, her hands trembled and tears rolled down her cheeks. All these years, she thought she was unwanted, unloved, and a burden. But now she finally understood. Her life had been built on lies. Her mother had made terrible mistakes, but at least she had tried to write the truth before it was too late. Most of all, Kima's heart broke, with both sadness and relief. Sadness for all the pain she had lived through, but relief that Lumo was not tied to J-Lo. He wasn't stuck with that cruel man forever. There was hope. That letter changed everything. It gave Kima strength. Now she had proof. Proof that she had never been J-Lo's to throw away, and that Lumo didn't have to be either. Kima, once a quiet girl with no voice in her own, began to change. With the love and support of Tego and Abeni, she started to believe in herself. One day, Tego took her to visit a small organization that helped children who had been abused, abandoned, or forgotten, just like she once was. As Kima walked through the building and saw the scared faces of the little children, something inside her shifted. She knew exactly how they felt: the fear, the loneliness, the feeling of being unwanted. She asked if she could help. The staff welcomed her with open arms, happy to have someone who truly understood the children. Kima started spending her afternoons reading to the little ones, feeding them, and playing with them. The children quickly grew attached to her, and for the first time, Kima felt she had a purpose. One of the workers encouraged her to share her own story, the pain, the betrayal, and the strength it took to survive. At first, Kima was scared. Her voice shook the first time she spoke in front of a group of women at a small community meeting. But as she talked, people listened. Some cried. Some stood up and clapped. They told her she was brave. More invitations came. She began speaking at churches, schools, and women's gatherings. She didn't speak with fancy words, just simple truth from her heart. She told them about her mother's death, about being thrown out in the rain, and how a stranger who turned out to be her father's friend saved her. Soon, local news stations started calling. They wanted to hear from the girl who had turned pain into power. Kima's face was shown on TV, and her story touched thousands. People started writing letters, thanking her for speaking out. Some even said her story gave them courage to leave bad homes or speak up about their own pain. Kima couldn't believe it. The girl who once slept outside with only a backpack and no hope was now helping others find their voice. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting for others, becoming a light for children still trapped in darkness. And she promised herself one thing: she would never let another child feel as forgotten as she once did. When Kima turned 18, the first thing she did was begin the process to bring her little brother Lumo back. She had never stopped thinking about him. Every birthday, every quiet night, every happy moment, she always wished Lumo was by her side. With the help of Tego and a kind lawyer who heard her story, she filed a legal petition to get custody of her brother. She was no longer a scared girl. She was now a young woman with a voice, and she was ready to fight. After months of paperwork and waiting, the day finally came. Kima, along with police officers and child protection officials, arrived at J-Lo's house. Her heart was racing. She hadn't seen that house in years, the same house where she had been treated like nothing. J-Lo came out, laughed when he saw her, and said cruelly, "So, the girl who cried in the rain wants to play hero now." But he stopped laughing the moment he saw the court papers. The officers told him it was over. He had no right to keep Lumo. He yelled, tried to slam the door, but the cameras had already started rolling. News reporters had come along, ready to expose the truth. And what they discovered shocked the entire nation. J-Lo had been collecting welfare money from the government using Lumo's name, pretending to be a loving father while he was actually using the child for money. The footage of his angry red face, shouting at the police, went viral within hours. People all over the country were furious. How could a man throw out a teenage girl and then use her baby brother like a money machine? Kima's story was now everywhere, on TV, in newspapers, all over social media. As J-Lo was taken in for questioning, Kima finally stepped inside the house. There, in a small room, she saw Lumo. He looked up, confused, holding a worn teddy bear. She knelt down and said softly, "It's me. I came back, just like I promised." And for the first time in years, her heart felt whole again. She had faced the monster and won, not just for herself, but for her brother. As soon as Kima walked into the small room and called his name, little Lumo looked up. For a second, there was silence. Then, his face lit up. He rushed into her arms and held her tightly, not wanting to let go. Even though he was still small, he remembered her, the one who had fed him, bathed him, and loved him when no one else did. He didn't care if she was his sister. To him, she was his mother, and to Kima, he was her son. Kima took Lumo home, back to the peaceful countryside where Tego and Abeni waited with open arms. Lumo quickly settled in. He smiled more. He laughed again. He called Kima Mama, and she didn't correct him, because in every way that mattered, she was. She gave him love, warmth, and safety, things he had missed for so long. The community that once didn't know her story now stood behind her. People in the town respected Kima. They saw how strong she was, how kind, and how much she had gone through. Mothers, teachers, and even strangers praised her for never giving up. Tego encouraged her to write everything down. "Your story can help others," he told her. So Kima poured her heart into every page. She wrote about her mother's death, J-Lo's cruelty, her nights alone, the rainy street where she cried, the cab ride that changed her life, and the love she found again in her brother's arms. She titled the book, Thrown Away at 2 a.m. When the memoir was published, it touched hearts everywhere. People read it, cried, and shared it. It became a bestseller. Kima was invited to talk shows, women's groups, schools. Her voice now reached far beyond the village. A movement began. Girls who had felt forgotten, broken, or unwanted found hope in her words. Kima had turned pain into power, and she was no longer just a girl who had been thrown away. She was a mother, a writer, a voice for the voiceless.